and welcome to another episode of Doubl3Tap. Today we are joined by Nick Metzler. How you doing, bro?
What's going on, guys? Happy to be here.
Yeah, man, pleasure to have you. For those who don't know, Nick is partner at WinWin, Web3 gaming consultancy. And today we are going to be chatting about a recent article you published, Nick.
Burn notice.
Burn notice, yeah. So we're going to be talking about this article. But before all that, what games are you currently playing?
Yeah, I'm playing a bunch, actually. I just finished playing Fableborn Season 3. Phenomenal game. Super, super fun. Made it to pretty high on the charts. I couldn't get higher than that, though. I'm currently playing a lot of Slay the Spire. Love roguelike deck builders. I think that's a really fun genre. Terraforming Mars is a really good board game that I'm continually playing. I was inspired by that one to make a different board game of equal complexity called Gene. So it's a genetic engineering game. It took me about a year to make, but that one I'm a huge fan of. Just played Wingspan again, if you're familiar with a bunch of board games like that. And I'm currently trying to figure out a new mechanic for Survivor auction. So I used to work on Survivor, so I'm in touch with the team and things like that. And the auction this season was pretty not good. So I'm brainstorming new auction mechanics, and I'll pitch it to the team. See if I can get that on the show.
There you go. I actually just bought Wingspan for a mate of mine for Christmas. Yeah, highly recommended if anyone's.
What I really love about Wingspan is their onboarding process. And this is not something that board games are typically known for, but it comes with like really big sheets that it helps you play the first 4 turns so that you understand all the mechanics of the game before you really get into it. And that's something video games really has nailed down, is that the FTUE, the first time user experience. Board games never really had it. And Wingspan sticks out as one of those that really does have it. So it's pretty cool.
Do you have a favorite between Slay the Spire and Doubl3Tap?
Yeah. So I've been playing Doubl3Tap recently, pretty in depth for the last 2 weeks. I gotta say Slay the Spire hands down though. Doubl3Tap, I feel like you fall into a pattern of just going for flushes, because that's the highest, most consistent cards that you can get. And then it's super easy to change out your deck to make it really consistent on the flushes. And if you can get a telescope voucher, that allows you to just get a lot of Celestial cards that relate to the flushes, so you can just like blow that out of proportion. I actually won a game using exclusively flushes. I didn't play any other hands. I had 47 flushes. I got to like ante 10. But yeah, I felt like I just continually fell into that pattern. Didn't have a ton of variety, whereas Slay the Spire just continues to give. Just gives and gives and gives.
I could not agree more. Which I forget what they call it, character class do you play in Slay the Spire? I feel like the variety through that alone is like just demonstrably differentiated.
It's crazy. Yeah. I've recently been playing a lot of Silent. I've been trying to nail down how to play a discard and draw deck. It's been really fun to try and discover and figure out. I've gotten really, really far. I've beaten A20 on And the Heart with those decks. But the only consistent win that I can get with Silent is Shiv decks. They're just like so consistent because that's like the only thing that scales with Silent. So yeah, trying to figure out what the best combos are. But yeah, it's super, super fun. Just continues to give.
Yeah, I love the poison and discard, and then I forget the names of the characters, but like the robot.
Yeah, the defect.
Just like the randomness with like the lightning strikes as you're kind of cycling through the orbs.
I love the orbs, because if you can just like get a couple focus and a little defragment to boost up your focus really rapidly, powerful, man. Super powerful. Yeah. You don't even have to hit the spikers. Those are the hardest ones, in my opinion, for Act 3, because every time you hit them, they hit you back, and it's just absolutely brutal. So defect blows through them.
As someone who plays a lot of TCG, I'm also curious to hear your opinion on the new Pokemon.
Yeah, I'm a huge Pokemon nerd. But interestingly enough, I didn't get into the new Pokemon TCG. I was into Pokemon my entire childhood, and it inspired a lot of my early creations. For example, I created like 450 of my own trading card series over the course of 7 years as a kid because of Pokemon, and it was just such an inspiration. But Yeah, I didn't get into this one. I just didn't need a money hole, if you will. But I was super into Marvel Snap for about 2 years. I played it like every single day for 2 years straight. I made it to the top 4,000 in the world. I was pretty proud of that one.
Didn't mean to cut you off, but I was waiting for you to bring up Marvel Snap. I remember in Korea, we're like leaving an event in the elevator heading down. You're like, yo, look at my new deck.
Just chilling the deck, you know? No, I was just, man, that deck before Eliath got nerfed, I had won Conquest like 6 times in a row. And to win Conquest, you need to win like 10 games in a row. So I had a streak going of like 60 games. And if you know anything about Marvel Snap, the variety and the variation in gameplay is super high. You lose like 30% of the time, no matter if you have a really good deck or not. So the fact that I had that streak was unbelievable. It was a totally broken deck, and they nerfed it one week later.
All right then. So to start a bit high level, maybe just so we can kind of set the scene. As we mentioned in the intro, you released this article about token burns. I'd like us to start with just what is kind of the fundamental concept of a token burn, and how in reality does it actually impact market forces such as supply and demand.
Yeah, totally. So what a burn is at a fundamental level, you're taking tokens and you're sending them to a burn address, and that's an address that nobody controls. So those tokens are fundamentally out of circulation forever. No one else can touch them. They're gone. And so the theory behind this was when you send tokens out of circulation and those are gone, well, the value didn't ever change in the ecosystem. So the value was retained and then actually dispersed to every single other person who's a token holder proportionally. So the theory was like, all right, so all of the value is just redistributed instantly and equally, and it was a really efficient way to do that, which is kind of why they caught on. And it was seen as bullish because, you know, you got deflation. It's the opposite of inflation, and so naturally, price should go up, right? Because deflation means that there's an equal amount of demand with less supply. In theory, price rises in that scenario. The tough part with that, and I go into this a lot in the article, is that it's not an instant increase, right? So when the burn happens, the price doesn't instantly adjust. So take that, proponents of efficient market analysis, efficient market theory. So ostensibly, it would be really good for a opportunistic trader to jump in right after a burn because they're getting free value, right? So that was the theory, and so they would push the value back up. The tricky part is that doesn't actually happen. So yeah, I'll stop there and we can go for more questions.
Yeah. And so I guess what are the actual implications of burns or even buybacks on the effective market cap or FDV of a token?
Yeah, so when a burn happens, it doesn't actually impact the price because the only thing that impacts the price are buys and sells, because that's what pushes the price up or down. And so because the burn didn't do any of that, the price actually isn't impacted. When you tie it to a buyback, though, the price is impacted because you're buying it back and then you're burning. So in that mindset, it's like, okay, that value that you put in there with the buyback, you're capturing it and then you're getting rid of the tokens. The question mark with that is like where like who is losing the tokens and what impact is that to them? The interesting thing that I found with FDV and market cap, though, is burns are actually destructive to both market cap and FDV. And this shouldn't be a big revelation, but it's just a surprise because most people wouldn't think of it. So market cap is it's the circulating supply times the price of the token, right? So if you decrease the circulating supply and the price of the token doesn't move, well, then naturally it is market cap destructive. And same thing with FDV. That's the total amount of token times the price per token. So it's the exact same thing, right? So you're decreasing that amount. So burning actually does nuke your market cap and your FDV. Interestingly enough, the opposite is also true. If you have a bunch of tokens that you are slowly dripping into the market and you're increasing the circulating supply or increasing the total supply, you're actually increasing artificially your FDV and your market cap, which makes you question if market cap and FDV are really good indicators of a token's health. But it's currently what everybody uses.
Is there a solution here that for teams that do want to include burns? What is it? Do they have to include the buyback? Are there other options available to them?
Yeah, well, let's talk briefly about the buybacks, and then I'll go into, should teams be doing a burn or not. So with the buybacks, it's naturally you are buying back token from the market, and as a result, the price is getting pushed up. There's a lot of people that would say, hey, you know what? Like, if they're buying back, I should immediately sell right after because that might be the highest price at which that exists. And so that's the possible benefit for the sellers. If the buybacks are conducted over a long period of time, pretty consistently, well, then naturally that will push the token price up. The question mark, though, is like, how much money do you really need to put in to move the price in a meaningful way? And if you've got, say, a $10 million market cap token, and you've got $100,000 that you are allocating to buybacks, right? You're going to move the price about 1%, right? So that's 100K is 1% of 10 million. You're putting 100K in the market. That should theoretically pump it up by about 1%. Maybe it does a little more, maybe it does a little less, but regardless, is that 100K best used to do that? Or should you use the 100K to help continue increasing the value of the protocol or the value of the game, or use it for marketing, for example, to increase your narrative? So especially in a bull market, I don't think buybacks are really the best efficient use of capital. You could, I guess, but like there's so many other ways to use money. It just feels like one of the lazy ways to do it. That, not to say buybacks are inherently bad in any way. It gives confidence to a lot of people that, hey, there's going to be continued value coming in here. And if the protocol or game doesn't have anything else that they want to do with the money or the protocol, then it might actually be a good solution. Or if you've got a ton of revenue coming in and you want to give a lot of security to the token because you have lots of big plans with it, say, for example, BNB, if you're going to be buying back regularly over time, that will absolutely push the price up. So it's really a trade-off, a question of like, how efficiently do you want to use your capital? Where do you want to use your capital? How do you want to use it to grow? And buybacks are a way to do that. I just don't think it's the most efficient way to do it, especially in like a bull market. For teams that are considering a burn, let's talk on that pretty briefly. So burns work because everybody believes that they work, right? And that's pretty much the thesis that I got to with the article after a lot of words. Because if everybody believes that a burn is bullish, then it will be bullish because everybody buys in as a result of that. I just think that, if you're going to do a burn, you should make it like a communal experience so that everybody does get in and involved. So like, for example, every time the community reaches a total of 1,000 levels, like everybody in the community collectively has risen above 1,000 levels or something like that, then a certain number is burned. Or every time that you personally burn a certain amount of tokens, well, then the treasury burns a larger amount of tokens, right? Just wrap some type of narrative around it so that everybody is in the same goal, moving towards the same direction, and everybody feels excited, even though it might not actually be doing anything fundamentally. I think the excitement and the marketing boost that you'll get from that is actually still beneficial. So if everybody believes that it still works, then it still does work, which is kind of a funny thing in crypto.
It kind of makes me think about games that go into maintenance mode. Like they've essentially like peaked their growth phase. And so they've scaled and they get to a point where the cost of continually shipping LiveOps, either like maybe the studio's focus has moved on to new titles, maybe the game's not bringing enough money or whatever it is, and the decision is made to put it into maintenance mode. Kind of feels like token burns in the Web3 world, like token burns are a perfect thing to switch on at that point, right? Where you like that capital is no longer needed for growth or LiveOps, and instead put it to work like trying to help the token, and maybe you get squeeze some last like drops of growth out of like price going up.
Yeah, the way you describe it sounds like a little last ditch effort.
Yeah.
Kind of is in a lot of ways. But I think one of the things that burns do well is they counteract emissions. So if there's a lot of emissions coming in, for example, burns do counteract those emissions. So if you've got a 5% emissions rate and you've got a 5% burn rate, then your supply really is staying consistent. The question mark is, where are those emissions coming to? Where are those emissions going to, for example? Are they going to players who are going to immediately sell? And is the burn coming directly from a treasury, which wouldn't sell? So they're not exactly equal, but from like a 1,000-foot view, they can be considered equal. You see this with ETH, right? The ETH supply has really just been pretty flat since the merge.
So Nick, one of the things that I think is one of the most misunderstood concepts in crypto is understanding the liquidity profile of coins. So I'm curious, like, how do you think about the liquidity pool with respect to token burns? So in other words, how can you use the liquidity pool, or how do you think about the liquidity pool with respect to emissions and burns, and then value accruing to those tokens?
Yeah. Throughout my journey in crypto, one of the things that always sticks out and comes back as like the right answer is it's all about liquidity all the time, because that's where the value really is. The value isn't in the token or the market cap. The value is in what people are willing to pay for the token, right? And so if you have a token that's $2, it doesn't mean that token specifically is worth $2, because if everybody sold at the exact same moment, then the price would tank. So your token is worth $2 at that very moment if you choose to sell, right? And so the $2 is like the highest possible value that token is worth at that moment. And so it's a really interesting switch to switch on. Your token is not equal; it's on a sliding scale, and that sliding scale is really determined by how much value is in the liquidity pool. Be it a AMM or the depth of the order books, for example, the amount of people willing to purchase the token, especially on the way down. This is really where market makers come in. They help make a market function efficiently, right? They provide those buy orders and sell orders to make the markets happen. So I think liquidity is really important, but you also don't want too much liquidity, because if you've got too much liquidity, then it's pretty capital inefficient. Again, you don't need as much liquidity. You really only need like 8% of the total daily volume in the liquidity pool to have a good functioning market. So I think the true value of the token is essentially what money is in the liquidity pool, as well as how much money is able to come into the liquidity pool if that liquidity pool starts getting drained. And so it's a mysterious amount. There's no knowledge about what that number is. And that's what makes it tough. That's the game, right? So yeah, I think liquidity is a super, super important thing. If you don't have liquidity, you don't have a market, right? And then it doesn't matter how much you believe your token is worth, because you can't sell it, right? So I think liquidity it always comes back to liquidity. If you don't have liquidity, you don't have anything.
You talked about how it's really important to figure out where the emissions are going and how the burns are happening. So I'm curious, like, if you've thought about, as the liquidity pool transforms over time, right? Are there different ways in which a burn, based on its execution, will have different implications for the value of the token? So in other words, if you're not doing the burn at a regular cadence that the market knows, but instead you're doing something like you suggested earlier, where you're kind of rallying the community towards a single carrot such that everyone's chasing the same incentive. And then you do the burn at a certain time as volume starts to come or flow into that token. I'm curious whether the burn has a different type of implication or effect, or if it's all just the same and I'm just wrapping it or putting lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, I did think about this a little bit in the article. And there's kind of two methods of thought. There's a one-time burn, and there's also an ongoing burn. And a lot of teams have chosen to go ongoing burn because we've got continual value accrual coming into the market, right? That's really bullish, right? The tough part with an ongoing burn is everybody expects it to happen, and so it's almost already priced in. So you lose a lot of the oomph. And if burns are truly just about marketing, truly just about narrative, then anytime you have something ongoing in marketing, you forget about it because it's not continually grabbing your attention. It's in the back of your head. You're like, oh, that's happening, and so you prioritize it less. Humans and brains usually focus on new things, right? It's what causes so much excitement and why the news is called news, right? Because it's not old. It's not consistent. That's why it's so hard to focus on things that are happening over time, because you forget about it. You forget that it's happening until there's some big crisis, and then it's smack dab in your face again. So if you're doing an ongoing burn, I actually think you lose a lot of the marketing juice that could come from it, because people just forget that it's happening and people just assume that it's already priced in. If you have a bunch of buybacks with it, well, then you can start to see that trend over time going up. But again, we already talked about why buybacks might not be the most efficient use of capital. So as a result, I feel like a one-time burn or sporadic burns happening at random times is actually a much more efficient model if you're going to do burns. Because you can turn that into a marketing event. You can turn it into hey, check this out. We just did this huge burn. Naturally bullish, right? But even though it's not, burns don't actually do anything. And the reason is I haven't touched on this yet. So in the article, I've got this really great graph. It's kind of like a bunch of bar charts, right? And you got a really big bar for the treasury, and then a bunch of smaller bars for all the different types of holders, right? So you got a couple whales, big bars. Maybe you got the team, pretty big bar. You got a bunch of individual holders, a bunch of small bars, and then you got the bar of liquidity pool. So the bar of the liquidity pool is relatively small, might be deeper than a lot of individual holders, but that treasury bar is super, super large. So when the treasury bar burns, you're just taking a little clip off the top. None of you wouldn't be able to liquidate all these tokens in the first place. So burning that little bit, it's like burning tokens that you wouldn't have been able to sell in the first place. So it doesn't actually have any major impact. So if you can't liquidate those tokens, you can't use those tokens for any good purpose, then burning is essentially kind of like free marketing in that way, because you wouldn't have been able to liquidate those tokens in the first place, right? So in terms of doing it as a one-time event, you can spread it out over sporadic instances. We know from, say, slots and casinos that variable rewards are super, super powerful because you never know when they're going to happen. It always feels like a surprise when it does. And so that really does trigger a lot of people getting excited about something. But if you take that one step further, and this kind of leads into the community burn aspect, if you really want to get everybody excited about it, then include them in the journey, right? Get everybody working towards the same goal and feeling like this thing is positive. And then if everybody concludes that, hey, you know what, burns aren't actually that useful, well, then you just change the goal. Don't make it about burns anymore. Change it into something that's more useful. Maybe turn it into a UGC art contest so that everybody gets excited about that instead. I think there's a lot of untapped potential in communal goals, and this is a term that I think exists, but I also maybe have coined. I don't actually know. It's a co-opetition. It's a combination of cooperation and competition. So you're competing together, and you can still have competition within that co-opetition. Like you can have a leaderboard, but you're all trying to make the number go up together, and number not being price, more just like whatever KPI that you want. So I'm a really big believer in the feeling of co-opetition where you're all competing against, say, the environment, PvE, rather than PvP.
I think you bring up a lot of really good points where this is pretty underexplored. I think one way I view this, I'm curious your take on this, is in crypto, there's a lot of different loops depending on whether you're building an application, right? Whatever, as long as there's a token. With the token, people have relatively underexplored the fact that you can create LiveOps around the token in and of itself. A lot of times people tie the LiveOps to the product. But within the token in and of itself, you can see the burn as almost like part of the LiveOps content treadmill. in a way where this is something that the community talks about, and it's directed towards a particular user or a particular persona within the crypto kind of archetype, underneath the crypto archetype umbrella. So in other words, the trader is one player of the crypto game, and the trader needs consistent live ops to continue to re-engage and reinterest the trader. So one way to leverage burns is to figure out when you're anticipating the trader's interest, and then as the interest turns to the particular token, that's when you have certain incentives lined up such that the burn occurs as the market basically starts bidding the token, which again affects the liquidity pool.
I think you touched on an interesting point where the token itself is a product, and this product market fit has a different, user profile than, say, a game. Game, usually you want players who play the game and are in there for entertainment. Token, it's completely different. There's a lot of people who would never even play the game in the first place. And the game for them is the token price, right? Getting in and getting out at the right values. And so that's their game. And there might be some crossover. There might be some opportunity there. But I think over the last couple of years, we've really discovered that for the most part, a lot of traders don't want to play the games. And so it calls into question, like, how deeply should the token be integrated into the game? I think it should probably be a light touch, and keep the token more as the investor layer, and maybe like a platform, like a creator layer, rather than using this every single day for gameplay. Like, we wanted to use it for gameplay because then you'd have high volumes and high transaction rates, and you can take a little clip of every token that flows through, and there's excitement there. And if everybody's using the token, there's a lot of transactions. It pops up on all the DApp radar charts and things like that. But I think ultimately the product market fit for token is, exposure to the product, the baseline product, at some level, and allowing it to be globally accessible. And I think that's a really big boost. And I don't think we need to forget that. Like, that's super powerful to have that opportunity. So I'm still a proponent of having tokens because it allows lots more people to get involved and experience the ecosystem. I think just the design of it is probably a little different. The thing that I'm probably most bullish on is the idea that everybody can co-create together, and you can see benefits from that. And that really hasn't been a business model that's possible before crypto. It's just been a nightmare to try and figure out royalty payments and things like that, or streaming small amounts of payments, or knowing provenance of certain items or certain ideas. And crypto solves a lot of that. It also unlocks global accessibility. And to me, that's a really big net positive. So yeah, I don't think it's going away. I just think the future is going to look a little bit different from what currently exists in the present.
If everybody is trying to find the new meme, and then everybody is creating content around that meme, which is garnering attention, in the same way that you're creating a Cards Against Humanity card that you hope, right, is content that other people are going to use in this game being trading. Do you think that maybe kind of the meme coin game is an early iteration of this, where the game is actually generating attention and betting on attention? And by you, the user, creating content, you can directly affect this game. I'm curious if you think there's any corollaries there.
Yeah, I totally see the corollaries. I would say that the difference between meme coins and games is meme coins are the simplest format of financialized attention. You can't really get simpler than that. It's the lowest atomic unit, because there's no utility. There's nothing else. It's literally just the meme, right? It's just the idea, and just the idea that, okay, it can go up, right? The difference with games is it's further out on the utility curve. Like, there's more in the ecosystem that you can do. Maybe some games will spawn from memes. I think we've tried to see a lot of that with like the NFT boom, where there's these big NFTs. That was the meme, right? That was the community. And they've tried to expand into other games and things like that, or other ways to get the community excited about the ecosystem that they're growing. The various levels of success, I would say. It's difficult. But with a game, there's so much more that you can do and you can experience, and you spend more time in the experience with the brand, right? Where memes, it's just like this thing that you're thinking about, but it's maybe not something that you're thinking about constantly. Games, you can spend hours and years even, right? And then you feel so much more connected to the brand because there's so much stuff. There's so many things that you can do in the ecosystem. So obviously I'm biased because I love games, but I think games are probably superior. The tough part is like memes are so much faster to make. You can make a meme in seconds, right? But it takes years and millions of dollars to make a game. So there's obviously a trade-off there. Yeah.
Well, you have to manage two products, right? Among others. Whereas with the meme, you're managing one product.
I'm still a proponent that play to earn is dead. I don't think play to earn works because every time you give away some type of value for a action that has no inherent value, then the value of the thing that you're giving for that free action should fall to the level of the free action, which means the token is going to go to zero, unless there is some type of backing behind it. And I think Pixels actually, I give them credit for this. They're innovating in a really solid way, which is bringing in advertising. You have the opportunity to pay for advertising, then those advertising dollars help go fund the play to earn component. It's like, okay, well, yeah, the value that people are providing then is their attention, right? Is their awareness of these ads. But with everything, once something gets saturated, people don't care about it anymore, right? It's got to continually start being new. And that goes back to our ongoing versus one-time discussion. Like as soon as advertising is like this known thing, it just kind of moves to the background and you don't really notice it anymore. It starts to lose its oomph.
And there we have it. I think that just about wraps it up. Nick, man, what can I say? It's been a pleasure. It's been too long, to be honest. Like this has been a long time coming, and we shouldn't have waited so long. But we should do another one as well because you and the team at WinWin are doing some cool stuff, and I've enjoyed the whole conversation. So thanks for coming on.
We gotta give the people what they want. If you want to see more of me, put in the comments. I want to see more Nick.
Nick is the best hype man I think we've had on the show. I'm loving it.
I love Doubl3Tap. You guys have such incredible founders and people come on. I truly learn so much, and I hope that this podcast gets bigger because like the knowledge that is shared on this podcast it's huge. You don't get to hear a lot of these people talk normally because they're usually just working and building, but you bring out a lot of their insights, and I really appreciate that, and I hope other people subscribe to this because you guys have really good questions.
Love that, bro. The content of this video is intended for informational purposes only and should not be considered as investment advice. The views shared by Alex and I are our own, and we may hold investments in some of the companies or digital assets featured in the video.